Hello, boys and girls of Credit Union Land, and welcome to the 16th episode of the CUInsight Experience. My name is Randy Smith. I am one of the co-founders and the publisher of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest from around the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and hopefully find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Dykstra. She is the president and CEO of the California and Nevada Credit Union Leagues. She's also on the WOCCU board, the current president of the Western CUNA Management School. Her list of accomplishments and awards are so long, we don't have time to read them all. But as always, I will link to her bio, and I highly recommend that you check it out. I was really looking forward to this conversation. I've gotten to know Diana more over the last few years. If you happen to see the video for her Wagner Award this year at the past GAC, you know that she likes to laugh a lot. And if you're a listener of this podcast, you know I do too. So there were a lot of laughs. We talked about everything from why it's so important for Diana to be involved not only on the state level, but the national and global level as well, what she's learned and taken from those experiences. We talked about innovation and how she's had her hands in so much of it. We moved on to the leadership and life hacks. It is just packed full of nuggets. I think you'll really enjoy that. And then we got into the rapid fire questions and we had a lot of fun. If you listen all the way through, you'll even find out where Grand Theft Auto comes into play in this conversation. With that, I do hope that you enjoy this as much as I did having the conversation. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Miss Diana Dykstra. Enjoy. Diana, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, and welcome to California.
I love it. You know I love it out there, so hopefully we'll be back soon. There is so much we could talk about. I've always enjoyed the time that we've spent together. I respect you for putting yourself and your opinions out there to move our movement forward. At the past GAC, you were the recipient of the Wagner Award, Outstanding Individual Achievement. And I'll tell you, this is a complete scratch my itch own question. I've always wondered sitting there. Did you enjoy taking the kind of reflecting back on your career? Or is it kind of one of those things where you're like, I'm not done yet. I'm still here. Like there's more to do.
Yeah, it was really pretty funny because it was like, well, this was an old people's award when I started going to the Wagner. And so to your point, no, I wasn't done yet. But it was really kind of fun and interesting to reflect back, because you really don't take a lot of time thinking about that day that you started or that day you caught the bug for working in credit unions. I did feel old, and I didn't like that part.
You did that. That's not
everything else
part.
Was awesome.
Well, it was fantastic. I loved the video and the focus on your laugh. So I'm sure there on a previous episode, one that Doug from Visa was on, his wife said that if you played a drinking game with how much I laugh on this podcast, that you'd be really drunk by the end of an hour. So between the two of us, if she's listening, she's going to be hammered. But no, anyways, as we're recording this, we were talking before we went live that you just got back from Poland. I love to see as much of this beautiful world as possible. You've actively been involved in credit unions, not only in California and nationally, but globally. Why is that so important to you?
Well, I think that, number one, I learn a lot from the international credit union system. We've got a great history here in California and in the United States and a lot of success. But when you go back to the international, I went to Africa last year. I've been to Poland a couple of years. It really makes you remember how important and significant the credit union movement is worldwide. And a lot of it is I learn stuff, and I go to also help them learn and how they can advance their systems. So it's just an awesome thing to do. And it humbles me seeing what they do, and with the tools they have or don't have, and the innovations that they're able to make because they're starting 20 years ago versus 110 years ago.
Right. We've seen that around the world, right? Where you didn't have the traditional setup, so you can almost start fresh. I'm excited for June. I'm doing my first international experience and going to Kenya. And Lois had just actually emailed me yesterday because I guess they want to start a trade publication. And so she was like, could you spend a few hours with them? And I'm like, I have purpose. This is amazing. So it was, that made the idea of the trip even more exciting to me. So
yeah, and that Kenya credit union system, they're amazing. I sit on the board of directors with the association guy from Kenya as well. When I went to Development Educator, I had 2 of my classmates from there. And so you'll love that system. It is the biggest system in Africa.
I am so excited for that. I was just going to say it could be an ongoing thing also on the podcast to see how long it takes before DE is mentioned. So we're 3 minutes in. We did pretty good. we did well there. Do you have a favorite experience from your work outside the U.S.?
Oh, favorite. Everything I do is my favorite in the moment. So I can't say that I have an absolute favorite. Probably the first engagement I really went on was to Australia. And that was really fascinating meeting, looking at what taxation has done to their system, how different the regulatory environment is. So I learned a tremendous amount from Australia, which helps me here in the United States and in California try to thwart off the attacks that they had to sustain. But it was a great learning experience. But I've been to so many different places. I couldn't pick one. I love them all.
You love them all, like a child. No, it's funny you say that. Everybody asks me where my favorite place I've ever been is.
You can't name a favorite.
No, I'm always like, it's wherever I'm going next, quite honestly. So,
indeed.
What advice would you give someone, like myself, and I know there are a lot out there who would have an interest, they have an interest in the global good, and they'd like to be a part of that global CU system. Any tips to getting involved?
Well, the first way you get involved is to go to one of the World Council conferences. And I know for a lot of credit unions, that's out of reach. But every 4 years, it's in the United States. So next year in 2020, it's actually here in Los Angeles. That is a really good place to start to get to know people from the international credit union system. The other thing for women and men is Women's Global Leadership Network. So it just starts local, it starts small, and then from there it grows, and you make those connections and you get involved and be able to go to another country. I say go to the World Council in 2020 because it's easy. Every airplane flies into Los Angeles. Let me tell you, it's a mess.
It's a mess. And then next year at GAC, you can do the Global's Women Leadership Network breakfast.
Indeed.
Right?
Yes, you can.
When I was scouring the interwebs preparing for our conversation, I was actually blown away by how much you've had your hands in, from Western CUNA Management School to CU Direct to financial literacy programs and Plexity and, work with the Children's Miracle Network. And I know you serve on a bunch of boards and committees as well. 2 questions. Number 1, when do you sleep? And then number 2, what's continued to motivate you to innovate our system over the years?
Wow, those are all loaded questions. I do sleep. I sleep very well. I am very structured in how I work, so I have capacity, so I know how to manage all of that. And it's really, I have been lucky in my life to work with great leaders that have given me great tools and great opportunity. And I think when I look at all of the things I'm involved in and have been involved in, I think it's my responsibility to give back. And when maybe that sounds arrogant, but I do think I have a lot to share and I have a lot to give. My biggest thrill is when I watch somebody young that I mentored, whether it was a Western CUNA Management School or a chapter meet, wherever that was, and watch them succeed. And so I think that's what keeps me going all the time. And not that I think I'm better than anybody or I have more to give. I just have the passion to give.
I love it. I'd like to circle back to something where you kind of started that answer there. Time management. Do you have a way that you structure your day? Do you keep a to-do list? I mean, what does that look like? How do you keep that balance?
I will not turn this camera around so you can see my desk. Some of it is pile management. I don't really do a to-do list, but when I go to bed at night, I know what my priorities are. I do a lot of work when I get home, just kind of going through in my head the day, what I missed, what needs to be done, what's coming up. So I start the day and I read you I get up early in the morning and I read all of whatever's come in overnight. And because you're on the East Coast, it's one of the first one that pops up there.
It's early.
So I read, see what's going on. And that kind of also sets the agenda. And then certainly my travel and meetings. I don't know. I just have always been busy. So I just naturally know how to manage it. Doesn't mean that I've not forgotten things. Every once in a while, it's like, oh, no, but I catch up fast.
So are you able to turn it off at night? I mean, like once you're done and enjoy things outside, or?
Yeah, I'm pretty good with turning those things off. Although every once in a while, something hits you in the middle of the night. Why do you dream your job once in a while? No, I forgot to do that. But for the most part, I try to keep a good work-life balance.
That is good. That dreaming your job. Prior to credit unions, I was in a career that I would say was a nightmare, where I'd wake up going, how am I supposed to do this? And now I'm lucky enough to do what I do for the last decade. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I love these people. I really wanted to ask you this, and this is a podcast, so nobody's going to be able to see the reaction on your face. But
oh, no.
What's your reaction to the phrase, but that's the way we've always done it?
Oh, that you can put that face out there. I hate that phrase. That's probably what has motivated me my entire life, even when I was a teenager. What do you mean that's the way we've always done it? What a stupid excuse. There's always better ways to do something. And I'm pretty sure people that work for me, every time they would say, but we've always done it that way, they would get that face that I just gave you, and they would get very annoyed. But I think my success and the success that I bring to the system is to challenge the status quo. And it's so important we move ourselves forward. And we've always done it that way is like a killer to me. And anybody that says that doesn't work for me anymore.
That's kind of a quick exit at that point, I take it. So, is there a belief currently in credit unions that you think will either have to fundamentally change or is fundamentally changing in the relatively near future to make sure we all stay relevant?
I think our business model is solid and that stays fine. What I worry about is we rest on our laurels. I think you've seen it. We've all seen it, where customer satisfaction, member satisfaction between banks and credit union has basically almost come equal. That we've always sat on, well, it's the member experience, it's our care for our members. And I think we're behind in the digital space. I talk a lot when I talk to groups. We're not attracting the millennials as we should because our story doesn't resonate. So we have to really take a step back and say, just because we've always done it that way, what do we have to do new to really be in the hearts and minds of the next group that's going to grow the system?
I have to imagine, we've heard, you and I are both all over the place at conferences, and there's been that conversation the last few years about the war on talent, basically the war for talent.
Right. You're
in California. I mean, when you think of like tech companies and everything that's changing, this is just making an assumption. You can correct me here if I'm wrong, but I would almost assume that war for talent is even tougher in a state like California compared to other places maybe that aren't known for the tech and the innovation and the exciting jobs working at Google or Uber or something like that, Yeah,
the credit unions that are up in the San Francisco, San Jose Bay Area, where most of the tech companies are, their average opening salary for a teller is in the $20 to $25 an hour range, and they can't keep them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is really, really tough. And so that's part of why we have to modernize what we do and make it fun and exciting to fit their sense of social responsibility, because the millennials have a huge sense of social responsibility and they want to be part of something that's great and growing and challenging, and we're just kind of stuck in the mud. And I say that in general. There are credit unions that are doing great things, but as a complete system, we've got to be the new credit unions.
Is there a disruptor out there or something that you're seeing that maybe scares you more than something else?
Oh, there's a lot of disruptors out there. I mean, you look at all the fintechs, right? They're doing remarkable stuff. And I really think there's an opportunity right now for credit unions. We have market, right? In California, we have 13 million members in California credit unions. They struggle getting relevance and getting eyeballs. And how do we partner with them? Instead of fearing these innovations, is why aren't we bringing them in and partnering with them? We're able to develop the systems and the experience that the consumer wants today. But that gets in the way. Well, our mainframe doesn't do this, or we've always had that, and we have these regulations. And I've never met a regulation I can't work around.
Yep.
Yeah. But we make a lot of excuses, and I think it's scary to a lot of people. Change isn't comfortable. For me, change is just inevitable, and you've got to do that. But I do recognize some people, I just want to know my job, I want to do my job, I want it to be predictable, and I don't need it to be different.
That's something I love change. I get bored too easy, I think. So, and you just said you look at change, I think, in a different way. If people, whether it's on your staff or just in the system, if they struggle with change, do you have any tips, hacks? Is there a way that over your career you've helped people not be afraid of what's next?
Well, and I think that we don't give people the authority. And I look at when I started at a credit union, to get authority to do anything outside of here's the job you need to do. You need to check this box. You need to put that paper here, yada, yada, yada. And so when I go into an organization, the first thing is a leader has to give you authority to be creative and to make mistakes. I talk about all of the mistakes that I've made, all the failures I've made, but they're not a failure. They were an opportunity to learn. And I think if we in the United States, we think failure's bad. And so we need to turn that word failure around as an opportunity to learn. Because every single failure, let me tell you, I learned some big lessons, and it made me better for the next time.
Do you have a favorite? I was going to ask you this later in the show. One of those failures that you're like, wow, I'm actually glad that turned out that way because of this.
I have so many failures, I couldn't tell you that. But what I can tell you is I know when to fail fast. I don't fall in love with my idea. It just, I have an idea and I want somebody to poke holes in it, and I want people to go, we can't, we're going to try, or we start down that road and wait, this is really stupid. It's never going to work. So I don't have my gosh, I wish I hadn't. The only thing I wished I hadn't done at 16 was get into a car with two boys and my girlfriends and the boys we didn't know, and ended up being arrested for grand theft auto. And my father was the head of the probation department in Sacramento County. And the boys got away. They ran out of the car, and the stupid girls in the back of the car thought, what's going on here? So it's not on my record, so it's okay. But that was my biggest failure in life.
Oh, how things could have turned out different. A life of crime. I love that. When you talked about poking holes and having people to poke holes, do you have a network of people that you lean on? I mean, to give you an example, one of your former peers in the league system, who at the time when I was starting CUInsight had left Credit Union Times. I used to call him about stuff, and the reason why was sometimes he'd just tell me, like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And I would go, please tell me why. Because so often we get people try to just give us positive feedback, right? Like, so it's that idea, you were just speaking to me there. I find learning how to fail is almost, for me, it's been from experience, where now I'm better at going, that's not working. Shut it down. Let's get out of there and do something different. But in the beginning, I used to hold to things like I can make it work somehow. So do you have a group, or do you have people that you depend on that you just know are going to, take off the gloves and tell you what they think?
Well, it's certainly, I've been around a long time, so there are people that already know that I can take a punch and it's okay. So I bout off things all the time, and I get that, wow, that's a great idea, or like, what are you thinking? But from all of those, what are you thinking conversations, that's how Plexity started. I had this great idea. I thought it was wonderful. It's great. But when I got the two other league presidents in the room, and we started poking at one another, it's like, oh, you're right. We can do it this way. We can do it that way. And I think you just have to, again, you don't have to fall in love with your idea. I never had a single idea that was only mine.
Right. That's true, too. I'd like to switch gear a little bit. We've kind of already started to do it, but to move into the leadership and the life hacks portion of the show, what inspired you originally to take the gig as president and CEO of the California Nevada Credit Union League?
Wow. Well, I had been in credit unions since 1982, and it was a great ride. When I went to work for Patelco, Ed Callahan was a big system player, and making sure that we did advocacy and making sure we were out participating in the broader credit union system. So I fell in love with that, became a credit union CEO, had a great run for 10 years as credit union CEOs, and it was fun. I got to change environments in those credit unions where they were running great and the profile in the communities were great. And then I would get bored because once you fix something, right, it's like, well, I can't do anymore. And I've always been involved with the league for a long, long time. And it was just a natural fit. I had been chairman of the board 4 years before I came here. And I just thought I can do better. It's a larger platform for me to talk about why credit unions are important and how we can move the system forward.
Has the inspiration changed since you took the job, with the time on the job?
No, I don't think the inspiration has changed. I came in as the Great Recession hits, right? And all the corporate failure. So I'm having more fun now as we've come out of that ether and credit unions are healthy. And really, again, we talked earlier about the changes credit unions need to make. So I'm having fun today challenging the status quo when I talk to CEOs or I go and talk to young leaders in credit unions, is really getting them to think to the future and how we evolve the credit union model in this day and age.
How would you describe your leadership style, and how would your team describe it?
I don't even know what leadership style is. I am who I am. I am who I am on this show. I'm who I am I'm the same person everywhere I go. I think my style is empowering. Again, if I have to do your job, you don't want to work with me. Or I don't want you to work with me. I want people to take ownership of what they do, be proud of it, and move it forward. My only rule is keep me involved, keep me informed. I don't ever want to be surprised that we went and did X when it could hurt, whether it's here at the league or at a credit union. So my leadership style really is to bring people together that are empowered to do their job, make change, and move forward.
How do you find those people that work well with you?
I think the people that leave, the people that know me will come and work with me. When I move into a new organization, sometimes people don't like that. They don't, we've always done it that way. No, it's the league. We can't do those things. And eventually they self-select.
Survival of the fittest, eh? Has your leadership style changed over the years, I guess? Is this how you always were when you think back to maybe being a younger CEO the first time around?
I was older when I was a CEO, so I wasn't that young. I guess it was almost 20 years ago. Gosh, you're right. I was younger. I think I was more nervous in the beginning, right? I hadn't really worked for a board of directors. That was a big change. I always had cover with the CEO. I probably took a little more time in my first CEO gig understanding the dynamics between board and CEO relationships, how you bring a board together, because you can't fire a board, right? And they're there for their reasons, represent the membership. So once I got that under my first one under my belt, it became easy because I understood the dynamics and I honored the dynamics of board, CEOs, staff, senior management. And so I got myself right back up eventually.
I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that. When you think back, if there was somebody out there listening right now who either wants to be a CEO someday, or maybe they're even pursuing that opportunity currently, or they're new into the gig, is there a tip, a life hack, something that you would is there something you share with a new CEO at this point to maybe help make their transition easier when it comes to dealing with a board for the first time? Because that's a unique experience. You go from having kind of one boss to having multiple bosses. So
yeah, and I would say my biggest recommendation was every board member is important. They all have a view, and it's a partnership. It's not you hired me and this is what we're going to do. It really is a dialogue. And for me, in both of the boards, the credit union boards that I work for, I was more a trainer, explaining and giving them the insight and explaining why we might want to move forward, and then listening to what their concerns were, right? you have to understand what makes them worried or what makes them uncomfortable, and not just bulldoze your way through it saying, but you hired me and we need to do X, Y, Z. That's when I see credit union CEOs either be miserable or they lose a job or they become frustrated. You just have to remember you have 10, 12, 15 bosses, and you have to honor that. You just have to honor that.
You mentioned listening. Is that a strong suit of yours, and has it always been?
I'm a good listener. My biggest problem is I'm a quick answerer. If that makes sense. Yep. I hear and I'm very sensitive to what people. I can read people fairly well, and sometimes I'm too quick to answer instead of letting the question or the concern or the conversation take its normal path. So you have to be patient. I talk about Yoda all the time. Yep.
Yep. I like that. I have a friend that I've told him many, many times that I wish I had. He's one of those people who listens before he formulates his answer all the time. And I'm too often thinking about what I'm going to say next. I've tried to get better at that over the years, but it's a constant struggle. What's the greatest strength of your team at the league?
So we are a small group. We are 29 people. And we work well together. We trust one another to go out and do the best they can in the job that they do. And they have the power and the authority to do that job. And it's so much fun when we get together and we talk about what we've done. And when we start sharing ideas on how either they can do something better or how I can do something better, it's just a great working environment. It's exciting every day. Every
single day. Is there something that they've heard you say so many times that they could finish your sentence?
Oh, it's probably, I don't know. If you know me well enough, I have a lot of stupid sayings. And I'm sure they roll their eyes and could finish them. One is risk more, fail faster. And the one thing that they hate is all the time I feel like a 2-year-old. Why? What's the problem? And so how are you going to fix it? Why? So that's probably what annoys them most is like, oh, I can see the why formulating in her mouth right now.
It's about to come. We know it's coming. We better have an answer to why. When you think back to early in your career, is there a mistake that you made or that you often see young leaders make?
I think that I wasn't prepared to be a manager of people.
Okay.
Right? And that was probably the hardest transition. I was so thrilled when they decided to make me manager. And then the day I became manager, all of these personal problems came at me. And I thought, I was never trained for this. And I don't think I handled that well. So I think that you just have to, all of a sudden, the switch from I'm a group of employees to I'm a boss was really hard. And I wished I had been a little bit better in managing people in the beginning. On the other hand, that's probably the only way you learn. And I think the mistake a lot of leaders that fail don't recognize is you can fail. And it's okay to fail. You just have to learn and apply those learnings. So I adjusted. It was a tough first year and a half, but I figured it out.
I think you mentioned it. I was going to ask, you mentioned earlier about the kind of those memorable failures. That's, you're speaking my language there. That's something I try to impart on my team as well, as the idea that we can fail at stuff. That's okay, because we're one step closer to something awesome happening. So has there been a piece of advice or a life lesson that you received that you've just carried over time that you kind of constantly go back to?
I do. When I went to work at Patelco Credit Union with Ed Callahan, I got to my office. I was so excited. I moved from Sacramento. I'm in downtown San Francisco. I'm just thrilled. And I was hired as the czarina of everything else. Because Ed wanted me to do everything that wasn't in the operations of Patelco at the time. And I'm in this office on the 6th floor. There's no air conditioning, so the windows are open, and you hear the beautiful city noises. And he comes into my office and sits down, and he says, "Well, kid, how do you like your office?" I said, "I like it just fine." He said, "Did you notice that the chairs are 2 different colors?" "No, but they're okay." "Really? How about that credenza? It doesn't match your desk." "No, it'll work." And he goes on and on and on, pointing out everything that's kind of wonky about this office. And he got really mad at me because I didn't realize I was supposed to be upset that my office was a mixed match of old furniture. And he sat there and he says, "Kid, I got to tell you something. I want you to remember, it is not your money. It's not the credit union's money. It's our members' money. And so your furniture is going to stay this way forever." And it's like, okay. But I will say I have used Ed's saying every day, because it reminds me that every dollar we spend, every dollar I spend is a member's money. And we've got to be really mindful.
Absolutely. When you run into a problem, is there, you're kind of hitting your head against a wall. Do you have any like hacks or anything that you do to kind of look at it from a different direction or, just get through to the other side?
I usually call somebody and say, look, I think I'm being really stupid, or I can't figure this out. And it's really good to have somebody or a group of people that you can say, hey, I don't have the answers here and I'm really struggling. Help me through that. And I think, again, that's something that as people, we're not supposed to show that we're not great all the time. And you just have to have a trusted group of friends that will tell you the truth.
So are those people in credit unions or outside or a combination of both?
Combination of both. Mostly credit union people because I've been in the system so long. But I have some friends on the outside, and it's good to hear the brutal truth, and it's good to have them help you get out of those slumps that you're in or problems that you have. As a CEO, the biggest problem is you don't always have that in the organization to have that kind of conversation. So it's so important to have trusted partnerships outside that you can go, hey, I think I really messed up, or I'm really having a problem with.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, that's part of being the leader, right? So as a leader, how do you make sure that I think there's multiple kind of angles to this question, but make sure that your message is staying fresh and clear to your team at the league, but also to your member credit unions and then on an advocacy side?
I probably read 500 to 1,500 pages of things a week. I'm a speed reader, so I'm always reading something either from the credit union system side, from the banking side, way outside. I get a lot of my ideas when I see something in a completely unrelated industry. So that's how I keep my learning fresh, is I'm always curious of what's going on in the world, what's going on outside of our little pod of 5,500 credit unions.
Yeah, I am with you there. I think people are always surprised at how little I pay attention to what they view as our competitors. But I constantly watch. I'm like, ooh, what's BuzzFeed doing now? Or what's, like, if they're doing that, carpool karaoke, how can we do that for credit unions?
Just as long as, I can't sing. So there's All
right. Well, I'll look for a different idea then. If you have a free day and there's nothing on the calendar, what passions do you have outside of credit unions?
I have lots of them. I love to travel. I love to travel. I love, whether it's in the United States or any country, just seeing and learning and appreciating the difference. If I'm at home, sometimes it's just drinking wine. I live in California, so I have quite a bit of wine, and it's fun to get friends together, like to cook and get a group together, drink wine and laugh. I'm just a normal person that does weird things every once in a while.
I hear you.
I don't ski because I'd break a leg. There's things that I've learned at 62 I shouldn't do. But when I do, everything I do with joy.
That is one of my favorite words. So I want to be respectful of your time. This is, to me, a fun part of the show. It's the rapid fire questions to wrap it up. The questions are rapid. Your answers do not have to be. So this one we actually already covered, but the first time you got in memorable trouble, was it the Grand Theft Auto experience?
Yeah, that was really bad. It was really, really bad. And I didn't even know I did it.
You didn't even know? You had no idea, just by association, next thing you know. So did your parents have to come pick you up, I take it, or it was?
Yes, my father had to pick me up from the police department, and he was the head of juvenile hall, so he was quite unhappy with me.
I remember in high school, we got in trouble, a bunch of kids all together in a park, and the police officers who came in, they looked across at, there were probably 25 kids there, and they were like, Kim to one of the girls because her dad was the chief of police in the town. They're like, the rest of you can go, but you better tell your dad, Kim, because we will be. So it was. Do you have any daily routines that if you just don't do, you feel off?
Oh, daily routine. Well, I told you I get up in the morning and I read all of what's going on in credit union land and outside, so I kind of know what my day is going to be. If I don't have that, I kind of feel weird. But I do that, and then I exercise for a half hour so I can get all the frustration and the worry out. And then I have to have my one coffee every morning. Other than that, I am good.
Just one cup of coffee?
Well, I used to drink a lot, and it was with my personality and how quickly I talk, I realized one was better.
One was plenty. The random question, what's the best album of all time? That one you can listen to front to back.
I am probably, Leonard Skinner, Eat a Peach.
Okay.
And it was just one of the first albums I got to buy. There was friends, and every time it plays, I'm back to being a 16, 17-year-old kid.
It takes you right back.
Oh, I said Leonard Skinner. It was the Allman Brothers.
Oh, the Allman Brothers. Okay. Well, no, we'll make sure to get that right so we can.
My anthem song is Freebird.
That's nothing like some Skinner and a little fireball, eh?
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. I'm a reader. We have a stack of books at the house. I should have looked up the term. I just saw there's a Japanese term for hoarding books that you think you're going to read someday, but maybe I'll put that in the show notes. Is there a book over time that you've either recommended or gifted to people or that you just think everybody should read?
Over time, I'm old, so I've had a lot of books in my life, and I have bookshelves full of books that I've read over time, and I've passed some on. I can't remember, and I haven't done any lately, but I think we've got so much information coming to us, and it's in little quips of not so much books anymore. But I probably have, I've got bookshelves all over my office, because I can't give them away. I love these books. They meant a lot.
They are the one thing that's moved with me every place. I always
My daughter is a historian, and she literally has 10,000 books in her home.
No kidding.
And it drives me nuts. It's like, get rid of them. She says, I love them all.
I love them. They're my books.
They're my children.
As you've gotten older, has what's become more important to you? And has anything become less? And to give that a little bit of context, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self? Enjoy
the ride. Just really enjoy the ride. I think that in 25-year-old self, you worry about stuff and you fret about it. And when I finally got rid of that, and I was just able to enjoy the experience and be in that moment and make positive change, that was the best. That's really when I started feeling good, and every day, just enjoy the ride.
Is there anything that just has become less important to you over time?
Less important. I'm trying to think. Less important. And at my age, I'm not in this. I've got to be the next step. I've got to be the king or queen or any of that. I know now what I didn't know then, even if I didn't have this job, is making an impact. And it didn't matter what job I was in, and I look back, as long as I'm making an impact, it doesn't matter.
That's what makes you happy. Yeah, that's cool. Brings you that joy. There's a question that I didn't send you. When you hear the word success, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Success. Wow, I didn't have one. There's so many successful, great people out there, and success is one of those words that you can overplay. I work with so many people that are successful in so many different and interesting ways. So I can't, success is what you make of it.
It's the reason why it's one of my favorite questions, because I think we define success ourselves. So it's, what that means to you is different than what it means to anybody else out there, right? So beautiful. Well, I think that's the perfect way to wrap it all up. The last question I have for you, do you have any asks or final thoughts for our listeners?
I just want all the listeners out there to remember what we do. And our job is to change people's lives, and never, ever forget that. And you've got to be mindful of what those lives are and where they want to go and be there for them.
Beautiful. I absolutely love it. Diana, again, thank you so much. If people have more questions, is there a preferred method of contact for you? Is it email, LinkedIn, Twitter?
I have tons of Twitter followers. I have LinkedIn. I have Facebook, and I don't know how to use them. So the best thing to do is to email me. And it's dianad@ccul.org. It's an easy one.
Well, thank you again. We will link to that. So if people do have questions of you and everything else we talked about, and I greatly appreciate you taking the time, especially after you probably don't even know what country you're in since you just were coming back from overseas. I understand how that is. So thank you again, Diana, very much. And I hope you have an amazing day.
Right. Thank you, Randy. It was a pleasure. And it was an honor that you asked me to be part of this. So you have an awesome day too.
Thank you.